Hi, I'm Kimie.
And I'm Missy.
We are from on William Street, and we are here at 35th Ave Sew Vac to help to share some of our quilts with you and to also share some tips and tricks and some things that we have learned to make things a little bit easier. So before we get started, we just wanted to share a little bit about ourselves. We are sisters. We have been sewing since we were young. Our mother taught us to sew when we were little girls, and we started off with pillowcases and pajama pants and everything, and kind of grew from there. We did both pick up quilting about 20 years ago, started quilting. We went rogue though, we kind of designed our own quilts from the very beginning, figured it out as we went, and just absolutely fell in love, and we have been quilting ever since. So we are now official pattern designers. That we have our patterns for sale, and you will be able to see some of them in 35th Avenue Sew Vac. If you stop by and ask for them, they'll show you where they are and see some of our patterns that they have available for sale here in the store. So we just wanted to take a little bit of time to kind of show you some of our quilts, show you some of our patterns, to let you kind of see our style and see what we have to offer.
So we want to share some of our designs with you, just so you can kind of see our look, our aesthetic. You can kind of see just by looking around, we love color. We love bright, fun, vibrant color. We also really like a lot of negative space. And when I say we both love it, but Kimie really loves it, because she does the quilting on all of our quilts, and that is her playground. She really gets to play in that area.
Gives me a lot of room to really kind of determine what I want in the quilting, how it can elevate the quilt, and how it can really pop and bring those design elements to life.
So this quilt is our rock concert quilt. So this is a really good example of negative space. There is a lot of negative space on this quilt. And Kimie really took advantage of that by adding in these music notes and just lots of really fun quilty texture in this quilt.
This pattern is actually our newest one that we just released, and this one is called Checkmate. This pattern is a lot of fun. You can see we've got these asymmetrical flowers kind of flowing in, really playing with the asymmetrical balance on this one. And this one is foundation paper piece, but it's only two little pieces. So you're just repeating the same thing over and over. And this quilt is actually very scrap friendly. There are over 100 different fabrics in this quilt, and we just went through our scrap bin and rated it for all of our different prints. And it's a lot of fun to go in and pick through all the fabrics and all the quilts that you've made previously and put it together.
So this is part of our kids series. So we've got these different kid quilts that we do. I love applique. This is really my art, is how I do it with my fabric and my applique. So I'm not really an artist. Kimie has to draw all of my kids for me. They laugh at my stick people, but that's okay because she does the drawing and then I get to play. So this particular quilt, this is our Gone Fishing quilt, and we actually did this with Mr. Domestic to release one of his new lines last year, and it turned out really fun. And I also love having texture in quilts, especially with kids quilts. Kids just, they need that texture. It's just really good for their sensory. And this one I have to laugh because I'm rubbing off on Kimie, because I got two texture elements in this quilt. The little 3D fish were her idea and not mine, and I loved that she let me do that. And then I also have these fun little prairie points for our waves of our sea.
The other kids quilt that we brought today is our Aloha quilt, and this one is all of our little island dancers. And the fun one on this one is we have our little 3D skirts here on each of the kids, so they kind of pop up and add like that little bit of extra element of fun and surprise to this quilt pattern. Yeah. So the next one we're going to show is our Whirl quilt pattern, and this one does have a little bit of paper piecing in it in the gray diamonds, but it is super basic. So if you get into foundation paper piecing but have been intimidated or not sure where to start, this is a great pattern to kind of jump in, because it's just one block that you're going to repeat over, and it's just three really simple, easy pieces, and it's a great place to kind of get the flow of it, because it can seem backwards when you start foundation paper piecing. So this will help you get to learn that. And to get used to that before you go on to more complex projects.
And then this one also shows our love of color. So this one uses charm packs, and we did it in a gradient. So we've got the dark to the light to the dark again as we go through our color wheel. So another one that uses charm packs. So this quilt was actually specifically designed for charm packs. When you find that fabric line that you just love and you just want a little piece, that's what I did. It's like I really wanted something that was going to highlight all of those really fun prints. So this takes care of that, and then again, gives lots of really fun negative space for Kimie to play in.
This one we want to show you. This one has actually been one of our best sellers. And this really kind of shows what can happen when you go big. It really gives a pop and really makes a statement. So this is our windswept quilt pattern. And this one, the flowers actually started out much smaller. And Missy was going to applique them, especially the centers. But I decided, if we went big, you could piece it. You don't have to worry about appliquing. You can just go ahead and piece all those curves. So we went big, and then bigger, and then we went really big to make sure that those little ones didn't go completely crazy. And we absolutely love the way that it came out. So this one is a lot of fun. And again, because those curves, aside from the little yellow ones, all those curves, they get bigger and bigger, they're actually really pretty easy to do. So it's a pretty quick
Even a beginner curve piecer could tackle this and actually be successful.
So this one actually it does have a couple different layouts. We do have a smaller one that's a 1-flower design, and then a great big one that's a 4-flower design. So you can play around with some different layouts to find how many flowers you want on your final quilt. And then the last one we're about to show you, we're actually going to kind of use this to transition into our tips and tricks section, and that is our Paradise quilt. This one was inspired by the islands. It was part of the same collection as our Aloha kits. We love Hawaii. It's our happy place, and I love the green and the bright flowers and the foliage, and so this was inspired by that. And these are applique. So we're going to show you some different ways that you can do those applique pieces. These are raw edge. You can definitely do them needle turn if you prefer, but we're going to show you some ways to approach them, the raw edge applique, to make them really easy, especially where we have these points, to make sure that you keep those points and it doesn't get complicated or hard.
So when I start an applique project, you've got your template, and you typically have your template comes in paper format. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that paper, cut it out obviously, so that you've got something to trace, and I trace it onto chipboard. It's also the cereal box. So you don't have to go out and buy anything special, just keep your cereal boxes because they were really great for this. So I'm going to trace it on. That way, when I've got one piece that's going to be multiple times, this is just going to stand up a lot better as I'm tracing onto my fabric than that piece of paper. That piece of paper is going to wear out a lot quicker. So this is going to give you a nice steady. So this, I actually use this particular piece for the entire Paradise quilt. So you can see it still has held up very nicely for me. Another thing that you can do, if you're really, really careful, so you have to really pay attention in order to do this, but you could actually use this as your template and trace and just cut right around it with your rotary cutter. So when I say really careful, you want to make sure you're not cutting into your cardboard. So you just have to just be really slow. If you feel really good and comfortable with your rotary cutter, go ahead and use them. If not, then we have our pens or pencils. So a couple of different things that I use. These particular items are heat erase pens. You can use, there are so many different types of fabric pens. These are very specific for fabric too. So there's lots of different options out there. There's heat erase pens, there's water erase pens, there's air erase pens. So whatever you like to use. Also, I have found that a pencil works just fine too. So if your fabric is, as long as you can see the pencil on your fabric, if it's not a highly patterned fabric, this might be a little harder, but you can actually just go ahead and use a pencil because that's going to be the line you're going to cut out. So you're not going to end up with that pencil in your quilt. Another thing that I really like to do, so you can kind of see, this one I've got a couple of them traced on. You might also notice that I have some stitching on here as well. Hopefully it's close enough up that you can see the stitching. We'll take a picture just in case. But this is something else that I like to do. When I'm doing applique pieces that are larger, I don't do this on our kids' quilts. So I do want to make that point. This is something that I do on bigger pieces, or especially when you're doing layers on your applique. I love to use, it's the Superior Threads Charlotte's Fusible Web. So you put this in your bobbin, and then you can sew it right onto your fabric. And then once you go to your iron and iron this onto your background piece, that top thread is going to come right off, and it's going to fuse this to your fabric. So now you are ready to go back to your machine and do your applique stitch. So a couple of things, you can cut these and then sew this on. But the one thing that I really like, especially when you have some appliques with really little points like this, if you've ever tried to get really close to the edge on that piece around your sewing machine, those feed dogs like to chew it up. They like to suck it in and chew it up, so it makes it harder, and then those edges just aren't going to be nice. So what I like to do is I've got my pieces traced on, I sew just inside that line, and then I will go and cut all of these out and applique them in place. So that way, all of my little points are going to be nice and perfect. They're not going to be cut off, they're not going to be chewed up by those feed dogs. So I've got it done on my big one, and then again with my smaller pieces. So I've gone ahead, and this also allows it so that you can get really close to that line. So if you're sewing this, if you're sewing the fusible on after you've cut it out, you're not going to be able to get as close to that line, which is okay. You don't have to get that close, but it's kind of nice to be able to get really close to that line so that it fuses those edges nicely when you're going in and doing your applique. So as Kimie mentioned, this is raw edge applique. That's what I love to do. You can obviously do a lot of these with needle turn applique, and I've even seen people use this for needle turn applique. Obviously for that you're going to sew in a little further, but it's still going to hold that in place so that you can turn that fabric under as you're going.
Thank you so much for watching. We really enjoyed being able to come and share a little bit with you today, and happy quilting!